What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. Offset and Penalties podcast. We're on episode 11, which is crazy to think about. It feels like I've done more episodes than that, but, maybe I haven't. 11 episodes in, feeling very good. I'm appreciating all the love on the pod, all the people who are listening, and I appreciate all the people who are supporting the Instagram. The Instagram and the YouTube with the short form, with the little clips that I chop up from these podcasts and put on there, are doing way better than I could have ever anticipated. So really blessed to have that happening. And, I'm just a guy who is trying to get more comfortable talking in front of a camera and loves talking about sports. Yesterday I recorded a UFC pod. The UFC card is tomorrow. I'm recording this on Friday night. Hopefully this podcast should come out on Friday night as well. I'm going to post it right after this. So regardless, we got a good week of NFL football. One of the better weeks of the year. There are like 4 or 5 matchups that I just absolutely love this week that I cannot wait for. So without further ado, let's jump into it. We're at week 11. The Colts and Saints are on bye, but we got to talk first about the Thursday nighter that already happened. The New England Patriots are the first team to lock up that they're going to be above 500. They're the first team to 9 wins. They're 9-2 on the year. They have a bye in a couple of weeks. They look amazing, man. They beat the Jets, who are now 2-8. They beat them 27-14 on Thursday night. Really an unbelievable game by the Patriots because I'll give the Jets some credit. The Jets honestly did look pretty good in that game. They really did. I thought that first drive, they really burned a lot of clock. The run game was really effective against the league's best run defense. So I'll give the Jets some credit for keeping this game closer and more competitive than we would have thought from a 2-8 team like the Jets. But Drake May, I've been very vocal about my support of Drake May on this podcast. I do believe Drake May is the MVP of the National Football League. And on the stat sheet, only had 1 touchdown in this game, 281 yards. But he was great, man. He was great. And I think that a game like this, it wasn't eye-popping stats or anything, but it just showed who Drake May is as a quarterback. It is very decisive. He throws to his receivers without any hesitation. There were some beautiful deep balls. A couple he didn't connect on because we're so used to him connecting on them, but he really looked good. The one thing I want to talk about the most in this game, the TreVeyon Henderson breakout. This isn't a fantasy football thing. I do have him in one league, but TreVeyon Henderson I fell in love with this dude as a prospect coming out of Ohio State. I thought he was so electric in college. He was so fun to watch. He has top-tier speed in the NFL. I mean, we're talking Jahmyr Gibbs level where once he gets to the open field, nobody is catching this guy. And the whole year it's been frustrating for fantasy owners and for people who just, like me, who just believe in TreVeyon Henderson as a player because he wasn't getting run. It was Ramondre Stevenson. It was Antonio Gibson. And, I understand giving the vets trust. I understand that. But this guy could really elevate an already pretty good offense to another level. And it took Antonio Gibson, I think, rupturing his Achilles earlier in the year, and Ramondre Stevenson with an injury that's caused him to miss the last 2 weeks, for TreVeyon Henderson to really get his first opportunities to break out. And boy, did he. He had 2 touchdowns against the Buccaneers last week, 4 days later against the Jets, 3 touchdown game. He looked awesome, man. And the thing I want to point out the most, and the one valid reason as to why Ramondre Stevenson was getting a run over TreVeyon Henderson was the pass protection, right? It's a boring thing to talk about, but it's a real thing, right? You can have these explosive runners, these talented running backs, but if they're not able to help out in pass pro, they're not going to see the field. That's just the reality of the NFL, and frankly, I don't blame NFL coaches for doing it. Pass protection is very important. I noticed 1 or 2 times that he messed up in pass pro, but besides that, he looked really awesome in pass protection in this game. So I was just really happy to see the breakout from TreVeyon Henderson in this one. He's a hell of a player, man, and just good for TreVeyon, man. Really good for TreVeyon, really good for the Patriots. They're 9-2. They get a little mini bye before their actual bye a couple weeks later. They look awesome, dude. They look awesome, and a very favorable schedule down the stretch. They only really have 2 more games that, we could see them potentially losing. And they play Buffalo again and they play Baltimore. Besides that, it's very winnable matchups the rest of the year. They play Miami again. They play the Jets again. I think they play Cleveland at some point. They might have already played Cleveland. I'm not sure. But regardless, Patriots look awesome. I don't need to talk much about the Jets. The Jets are the Jets. And now let's get on to the rest of the week. And like I said, really fun week. Final international game of the year is this week. It's the 3-7 Commanders versus the 3-7 Dolphins in Madrid. Before the year, the NFL probably booked this as the Madrid game, as it just looked like it was going to be a really fun matchup for Madrid for a first game in Spain, because the Commanders were coming off of an NFC championship, and the Dolphins always had before the year still looked like they had potential with Hill, Waddle, Achane, etc. But obviously this game's 3-7 teams, kind of a sucky way to introduce football to the country of Spain. But regardless, hopefully Devon Achane gets me a bunch of fantasy points. And there's not much to talk about in this one. What there is a lot to talk about is a matchup of 2 6-3 teams, but both of them coming off of losses. We got the Buccaneers traveling to Buffalo to play the Bills. The Bills, this was a surprising line to me, are 5.5-point favorites. 46.5-point over-under. This is a great game, but I think this is a really, really, really important game for Buffalo. Whereas the Buccaneers should be in cruise control in their division, the Bills are far from it. We were just talking about the Patriots. The Patriots have 9 wins, and Buffalo already has dropped a game to them earlier in the year. They dropped a horrific game against the Miami Dolphins last week. I mean, the Dolphins just took the Bills' lunch money, and it was not even close. And now we're at this point where Buffalo's 6-3. That's a good record to be at this point in the year, right? The NFL's competitive, so you'll take 6-3. But 6-3 with some of the losses they've had, their losses have not aged well. Miami is not a good loss, and neither is Atlanta. The Patriots' loss aged very well, but the other two haven't. You drop this one, you're very far back from a New England team that is on a 7-game win streak, 8-game win streak right now. So yeah, you got to win this game. You're at home, and I think this matchup does favor Buffalo. Buffalo is very well coached, and they're very well led, and I think that makes a big difference. You see it in the NFL. The NFL is so competitive. A 2-win team like the Dolphins can beat a 6-win team like the Bills, like we saw last week, especially in the division. But I think because the Bills are well coached and they're well led by Josh Allen, I just think that we can trust them to bounce back from this game. Now, if they don't, this is going to get ugly for Buffalo. I think they're going to be a road team in the playoffs primarily. But this is a favorable matchup just in terms of this is a warm weather team in Tampa Bay traveling to Buffalo in mid-November. This is something we saw the Niners have to do last year. It happens, these teams that play in warm weather, when they go to the Midwest, when they go to the Northeast during November, December, right? It's a great advantage to that team that's already used to it. That's the reality of football, and that's the reality of the playoffs when it comes to football too. And I just think that Buffalo, this favors them in that way. I also think that if Bucky Irving, the talented running back for the Buccaneers, if he was back for this game, I think we're really, really looking at, okay, they can exploit this Buffalo Bills run defense that just got ran all over by Devon Achane last week. But no Bucky Irving, and I just don't really trust, like Rachaad White's a solid veteran back, but I don't trust him to get those explosive run plays at this point in his career. I'd love to see the Buccaneers run Sean Tucker, their young running back, more, just because of the simple fact I think he can give them some of those more explosive runs. That's how you built, that's the blueprint to beat this Bills defense. We saw Baltimore have great success with it to start the season. We saw Miami have great success with it just last week. That's the reality of playing this Bills defense. So with all that being said, they don't have Bucky, and I think Rachaad White will still get a lot of the work. No Godwin yet. I think this is a pretty favorable matchup for Buffalo. So give me Buffalo here, but 5.5 is a little bit of a steep line. So if I were to bet on this one, I would take the over. I think both defenses were gashed last week. Both defenses have shown weakness this year. So I think the over at 46.5 points, assuming it's not a rain or snow game, I'm all over it. The next matchup I want to talk about, we're going to the NFC North for this one. The 4-5 Vikings are hosting the 6-3 Chicago Bears, which is crazy to think about that the Bears are 6-3 because it really doesn't feel like it, but they are, man. And Minnesota, 2.5-point home favorites in this one. Another kind of surprising line to me, 48.5-point over-under. I was very, very critical on this podcast about Caleb Williams. I put out a clip of it on the Instagram and on the YouTube Shorts. I've been very critical of Caleb, but I got to give Caleb Williams some credit because the last 2 weeks, granted against teams that he should be beating in Cincinnati, in the New York Giants, he's put together game-winning drives to win the game. And I've been very critical of Caleb in terms of his decision-making, holding the ball too long. But what he's proven to me the last 2 weeks is he can be a guy, if it's close down the stretch, Caleb Williams can be a guy that basically wins the game for you. And he's done it the last two weeks. So I got to give Caleb Williams some props. I still do have concerns about him and some of his tendencies as a passer, but got to give him some credit, man. You got to. This is a much more difficult matchup, though, than Cincinnati and then the New York Giants. This is a Brian Flores defense that will send very different looks at you. And what we saw in their Week 1 matchup, remember, these two teams opened up the season on Monday Night Football. What we saw in that game was the Bears offense looked really good through a half, and then coming out of halftime, Brian Flores and that Vikings defense made adjustments, and the Bears had nothing for it. So I do trust Ben Johnson to look at that film from that game, look at the film from recent Viking games, and come up with a solution. But, that is in the back of your head. On the other side, the Vikings, man, this offense, it just doesn't quite look how we've seen it in past years with Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold. And I think it's a J.J. McCarthy problem, but I don't think the blame should be on J.J. McCarthy, if that makes sense. Kevin O'Connell is an unbelievable play caller, an unbelievable offensive mind. But I'd like to see his offense evolve a little bit more here. I think he needs to go with some short pass game, just rhythm throws, because that's what J.J. McCarthy's good at, right? He's good at these rhythm throws, get the ball out quick, play with anticipation. It's hard. I just think with the type of quarterback J.J. McCarthy is and kind of some of their O-line struggles they've had from time to time, it's just hard to hit those explosive plays down the field as often as I think Kevin O'Connell would like them to. So get the short game going, get the pass game going a little bit, get the run game going, and then get Justin Jefferson involved, for the love of God, because the Justin Jefferson has been unanimously thought of as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and it's just been a very underwhelming year for him, and that can be attributed to the quarterbacks, but find ways to get the ball in his hands, right? It doesn't always have to be down the field. Quick screens, digs, just stop routes, just anything to get the ball in his hands, right? And when teams play man coverage, that's where you can really have Jefferson punish a team down the field. But if teams are playing soft zone against you, just let Jefferson catch the ball in space and let him run. So, yeah, that's been an issue this year for the Vikings for sure, is it just feels like Jefferson isn't where he wants to be. For the reasons for my concerns with how this Minnesota offense hasn't quite evolved, I really do like Chicago as road underdogs here. I think that even though their last two wins haven't exactly been against great teams, and they haven't exactly played those great teams well, I think that still instills confidence in a young team with a young quarterback. So give me Chicago to go on the road. We saw glimpses of what they could do against Minnesota in the first half of their game earlier in the year. I think they're able to play a more complete effort in this one and get the win in Minnesota and cement themselves as a real playoff contender at 7-3 if they win this game. So, yeah, man, I like Chicago here. The other morning game I want to talk about in depth a little bit is the 7-3 Chargers are traveling to play the 5-4 Jacksonville Jaguars. And this was a Jags team that through 4 or 5 weeks, they beat the Niners, they beat the Chiefs. We were like, oh, Liam Cohen and this team might be cooking. And yikes, last week was tough. And the Chargers are 2.5-point favorites in this one. It's a 43.5-point over-under, very low over-under, which makes sense given the state of these offenses, especially Jacksonville's. And I just got to say, I was spending a lot of energy criticizing Caleb Williams. That energy should have gone to Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has not looked good, man. And it's sad because the potential of Trevor Lawrence has been there. It always has been. But it just has looked bad. He holds onto the ball way too long. He's very indecisive. He needs to be more decisive and let it rip because he's got such a great arm. But that just hasn't been happening for Trevor Lawrence. And last week, they should not have been up as much as they were on Houston, but they were. And then Houston mounted that unbelievable comeback. You can't have a collapse like that against the Davis Mills Texans. You just can't. And they did. Liam Cohen looked just absolutely fed up on the sidelines. It wouldn't surprise me, right? Like Liam Cohen came into the situation. Him and the GM got brought into this situation already with Trevor Lawrence there. This isn't the quarterback that James Gladwell, the GM, and Liam Cohen, the head coach, picked. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw Jacksonville potentially move off Trevor Lawrence. Now, it's going to be a little difficult because of the contract, and is there going to be any teams wanting to trade for him? What type of capital would you demand? But, the Trevor Lawrence thing has not looked great this year. It didn't look great last year, and I could really see Liam Cohen, if it continues to trend in this direction, just bringing in his own guy next year to be the quarterback, whether that's through the draft, through free agency, whatever. So with the O-line, the Chargers, it's been an O-line issue for them this year. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, both their star tackles done, but they really looked awesome against the Steelers last week on Sunday Night Football. And I think they've got Khalil Mack back, and what that game against the Steelers showed me last week is they can really lean on this defense to win them some games. And we knew their defense was good coming into the year, but they got injured. Now they're getting healthier again. They brought in Odafe Owe. They've got Khalil Mack. I could really see them leaning on the defense, and when the offense needs to step up, you've got Justin Herbert trusting Justin Herbert. So this one, Chargers minus 2.5, feels pretty surefire to me. That's what I will be betting on this one, and we can move on to other morning window games. Bengals Steelers 3-6 are the Bengals, 5-4 are the Steelers. This was a banger matchup a couple weeks ago on Thursday Night Football. Joe Flacco and Aaron Rodgers, both those offenses put up a ton of points. I don't know if it'll be nearly that many points this time around, but I think it'll still be a fun game offensively. The 5-5 Panthers. How are the Panthers 5-5? I don't know. They're going to Atlanta to play the 3-6 Falcons. If you remember earlier in the year, the Panthers beat the Falcons 30-0 in a shocker. The week after Atlanta beat Buffalo, or maybe it was the week before, whatever. That was a surprising result at the time. Hopefully the Falcons can get, for Atlanta's sake, can get it back against the Panthers. The 5-3-1 Packers, who have been the talk of the town. I've heard a lot of people calling for Matt LaFleur's job, which, you know what? The play calling has not been great. I'll give you that. The play calling has been for Green Bay. I think it is a little rash to already call for LaFleur's job, considering what he has done with Green Bay so far. And it's hard to find an offensive, minded coach like Matt LaFleur if you do move on from him. But maybe if Green Bay really feels like they have to move off LaFleur, you just promote Jeff Hafley, your defensive coordinator, who's looked awesome and will probably be a head coach no matter what. Maybe you promote him to head coach and hopefully bring in a good offensive coordinator. But, they're playing the 2-8 Giants. Packers, you got to get this one done. Because if you don't, against a Giants team that just fired Brian Daboll, which, by the way, not a fan of that firing at all. But if you lose to this Mike Kafka, interim head coach for the Giants-led Giants team, maybe the Matt LaFleur firing talks are justified. And then the 4-5 Texans are playing the 1-8 Titans. We don't need to get into that one at all. But what we do need to get into, and what I believe is the game of the week, this game is freaking awesome. It is a shame that this is a 105 game. It doesn't have Fox's number one crew. This should be a standalone primetime 1/425 game, but it isn't. The 7-2 Seahawks are playing the 7-2 Rams in LA. The Rams are 3.5-point favorites, 48.5-point over-under. This is the game of the week, and both these teams are just so hot right now. They're rolling right now, and I think it's been a very similar blueprint. Now, the way that their offenses and defensive function are very different from one another. But the blueprints for these teams have been elite passing games and elite defenses, right? And it's worked for both these teams. Now, the Rams and Seahawks defenses are much different. The Seahawks, I think, are a little more of a blitz-heavy team. The pass games are a lot different. For the Rams, it's a lot of just dropping Stafford back and letting them hit explosives down the field. For the Seahawks, it's a lot of under-center play-action explosives, whereas the Rams are in the gun a little bit more. They're running 3 wide receivers a little bit more. But this is a fun game. This is a fun game. This is their first matchup of the year. Both these teams had a couple early season losses to the Niners, to other teams, but they both really just have been so fun to watch this year. And I'm saying that as a 49er fan who does not like either of these teams. But the one thing, and you saw it on the thumbnail of this podcast, Puka versus JSN. These are the these are the two best receivers in the NFL this year, pretty unanimously. And statistically, it would be a lot closer between the two had Puka not already missed a game or basically 2 games. But man, this is seeing these two wide receivers going against 2 really elite defenses. It's going to be fun. And the Rams are 3.5-point favorites here. And dude, I'm leaning Seattle as road underdogs here. I just think that when you break it down stylistically or schematically, I just think this matchup favors Seattle. And the reason for it is the Rams' defense is great, but their one weakness when it comes to their team as a whole, and their special teams has been up and down, the Rams has, but besides special teams, the one Rams weakness we've seen is the back end, is their secondary. And Seattle, we saw what they did against a weak secondary in Washington a couple weeks ago. They hit these explosive pass plays that are amazing. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Seattle's kind of weakness is their run game, right? They just haven't, to me, just the run game hasn't been great for Seattle this year. But guess what? That doesn't matter because the Rams' run defense is already good as it is, so Seattle can just lean back on their pass game and torch that Rams secondary. Now, maybe if they become too one-dimensional, that Rams pass rush gets going. I don't blame you on that one. But yeah, man, I really, really, really do like the Seahawks on the road here to get a win, beat the Rams. It's not like the Rams always have a crazy home field advantage or anything. So yeah, give me Seattle as road underdogs here in LA. Game of the week, in my opinion. Two very similar teams, two teams that are Super Bowl threats for sure. And whoever wins this that's going to really, really help their momentum going into this last stretch of the year. So very exciting game there on tap. The other game in the afternoon window that has some big implications as well. We were just in the NFC West, now we're going to the AFC West. The 5-4 Chiefs. Wow, the Chiefs are 5-4. Weird. The 5-4 Chiefs are going to play the 8-2 Broncos. This is a must-win for Kansas City. Similarly to how Buffalo needs a win against Tampa to keep with New England. I feel like I talk about it a lot in this podcast, but the Chiefs and Bills, two teams that, just frankly, one, have been awesome this year. Let's get that out of the way. But they've shown weaknesses in games. And I think that they're two teams that we thought coming into the year were surefires to win their division. And now they're not. And now we're at the point in the year where when it's early in the season, you're trailing your division, it's like, okay, these teams will get it right. But these are the matchups where it's like, okay, Casey, we'll take your word for it. You lost 4 games earlier in the year, right? Now we're in the last half of the season. You're playing the team that's already 2.5 games above you in the division. If you lose this one, you're falling to 3.5 games against behind a team that will have already won a game against you. So you can't lose this game. And for Buffalo and Kansas City, and especially Kansas City, the home field advantage is so amazing, especially come playoff time. And we've never had to see Patrick Mahomes, who's always been in the AFC Championship or Super Bowl, we've never had to see him win 3 road playoff games in a row. We've never had to see him do that, right? And that's just because the Chiefs always win their division. They always get at least 1 home game, usually 2 or 3. But they got to win this one. And it's in Denver, right, which obviously, of course, favors the Broncos. And this is against a Denver team that even though they're 8-2, it's not like they're exactly coming into this game hot, right? The Denver defense is elite. Still no Surtain this week, but the Denver defense is elite. But offensively, Denver has looked atrocious, right? Sean Payton's play calling has looked atrocious. Bo Nix just doesn't look like he's in rhythm kind of like he was towards the end of last year. So I'm very curious to see how this matchup goes in terms of KC's offense versus Denver's defense because of the simple fact that on the other side of the ball, I have all the confidence in the world in Kansas City to dominate with their defense. Stylistically, schematically, this is a heaven matchup for Kansas City against this Denver offense because Denver has really, really struggled with separating against man coverage this year. That's been their big weakness. Their receivers haven't really been able to separate against man coverage, and Bo Nix hasn't really been able to throw in rhythm against man coverage. Also, the screen game doesn't work as well against man, which has been, a staple in Sean Payton offenses forever. And I think that Kansas City, even though they're going against Denver's offense, who has one of the best O-lines in the league, that doesn't really matter for Bo Nix right now. He still doesn't look good despite having all this time to throw the ball. And I think that the Broncos' screen games and their inability to separate downfield plays perfectly into the hand of a Kansas City defense that just wants to play man coverage against you and then win up front. So this is a heaven matchup for Kansas City. And regardless of what happens on the other side of the ball, even if Denver's defense plays really, really good against the Kansas City offense, I'm sorry, I just don't see a way that this Denver offense gets going against Kansas City this week. So give me KC, 3.5-point favorites. We know how Andy Reid is coming off of a bye. He always dominates coming off of the bye. And this is a must-win game for Kansas City. And it's not really a must-win game for Denver, but, nonetheless, I just like Kansas City in this one. So if Denver wins, though, like I've been saying, if Denver wins, watch out, because the Chiefs might win. If the Chiefs might be a 6 or 7 seed, no joke intended, in the playoffs this year. So the other afternoon games, Niners are 6-4. They're going to play the 3-6 Arizona Cardinals. This is not a surefire win like people think it is for the Niners, but Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall are back, which is absolutely fantastic news. I know Mac Jones has played great. Brock Purdy is still the starter and is still the guy and still adds more to the offense than Mac Jones does. So regardless, I don't need to get on a whole Niners tangent. Niners, Cardinals, Ravens, Browns is also another late window game. The Ravens are 4-5. The Browns are 2-7. I'd like to see the Ravens take care of business here, move to 500, and get back into serious contention in the AFC. Another just unbelievable game, and this is the final one I'll go in depth about. On Sunday Night Football, the 6-3 Detroit Lions are traveling to Philadelphia to play the 7-2 Eagles. Eagles are 2.5-point home favorites here, 46.5-point over/under. I love this game. This is such a high caliber game. This is what many people kind of assumed the AFC Championship or the NFC Championship was going to be last year. I think many people, it just felt like these two teams were on a crash course to play each other in the playoffs. The Commanders got in the way, beat the Lions, but this game rocks. This game is awesome. And there's a lot of storylines coming into this one, specifically with these two teams' offenses, right? Last week on Monday Night Football, that Philly offense was pretty freaking atrocious. Like it was not pretty to watch on Monday night. And granted, they were playing a really good Packers defense. It was in Lambeau, but the Eagles offense, their inability to get A.J. Brown going, it hasn't looked great this year. And we're yet to see the Philadelphia Eagles play 4 quarters of consistent offensive football this year. They've had shades of greatness. There's been games where Barkley's looked like peak Barkley. There's been games like that Rams game in the second half where their passing offense just looked phenomenal. But we're yet to see them put together a full 4-quarter offensive effort this year. And on the other side, the Lions, whose offense hadn't looked nearly as bad as Philadelphia's, has definitely lost. It seemed like they had lost a step. John Morton was calling the plays. Dan Campbell took it over last week very quietly. People didn't know that was happening until the game started against Washington. And the Washington defense is pretty bad. So gashing a Washington defense, you can't really read into it too much. But what I will say, man, is Dan Campbell calling the plays, there was something going on there, because it wasn't like it was exactly like this crazy creative play calling or anything, but I just felt like the utilization of Jahmyr Gibbs, of Amon-Ra St. Brown, and of Jameson Williams was just better. They were using J-Mo down the field more. They were using Amon-Ra on the short intermediate routes more. They were getting the ball in Gibbs' hands different ways. Those are their big three. David Montgomery and Sam Laporta are very good players, but their big three is St. Brown, Williams, and Gibbs. And if you can continue to get those guys the ball in the way that benefits their play styles the most, this offense is going to be freaking unstoppable. That's why it's been so unstoppable in previous years with Ben Johnson. So I really did like the switch for Dan Campbell to start calling the plays. Their offense just looked better. When I was watching the game, it just felt like the utilization of their stars was better. And, for that reason, I just think that this is a Lions road upset all over it. I really do. And there has been a lot of tension mounting in Philadelphia recently, and it just feels like that we're a bad offensive performance away, coinciding with a loss from there being a shakeup. And I don't know if that's firing the OC. I don't know if that's Sirianni taking over play calling. I don't know what that may be, but it just feels like it's been slowly bubbling over in Philadelphia, and I think this could be the week that it's set off and the Lions do what we've seen them do sometimes. Prime time, they come into a stadium and they just take over and they just beat you up and embarrass you. Dan Campbell teams do that from time to time, and I just think that the way these two teams are trending with Philadelphia, even though they have a better record, they're winning games, it's not exactly trending the right way. The Lions, what we saw last week, it's trending better. Give me Detroit on the road to beat the Philadelphia Eagles in what is a game between two top seeds in the NFC. These two teams look like they're on pace to win their divisions. They look great. So very fun matchup. Very excited for this one. In the Monday Nighter, I don't think this game deserves to be talked about very much, but I will mention it. The 3-5-1 Cowboys are going to Vegas to play the 2-7 Raiders. You know what? Sometimes there's Monday night games, and I'm like, man, I hate that I have class during it, and I have to miss most of this Monday Nighter. This game, I'm like, okay, whatever. So, Cowboys-Raiders, it is what it is. Cowboys better win, or else there will be some serious red flags in this game. And it will be interesting to see Quentin Williams and Logan Wilson, some of these new additions, see how they play on this defense. And, of course, you know, playing with heavy hearts with what happened with Marshawn Nealon, their defensive end, tragically dying a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, man, that is Week 11 of the NFL season. I'm really excited for it. Some really, really fun games. I think if you're going to watch football this week, Bucs Bills in the morning for sure. Seahawks Rams in the afternoon for sure. Obviously, keep an eye on Chiefs Broncos as well. Maybe split screen if you have the YouTube TV going on. And then Sunday Nighter, this is a peak Sunday Night Football game. Detroit, Philadelphia, very, very excited for it. So, yeah, really fun week this week. I'm really excited for it. I will be here to recap it, of course, as I always am. Pod should drop on Tuesday. And on Sunday, the UFC 322 reaction pod will drop because I'm recording this Friday night. We're 24 hours away from the best UFC card of the year, and it's going to be awesome. So if you're an MMA fan, if you watch both the football and the MMA pods, please tune into that one. I'll be reacting to what happens in that really just unbelievable UFC card. And if you're not an MMA fan, that's great, because that's why I do the football and the MMA pods. I'll see you for the Week 11 reaction pod. That'll drop on Tuesday. So I appreciate the love, everybody. I love doing this podcast. I appreciate everyone that supports it. And I say at every podcast, if there's any psychos that are still here listening to me rambling at the end, I appreciate you so very much. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to edit this pod. I'm going to publish this pod. I will see you guys later.